Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. Almost forgot for a second there. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Charmed. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, we are in the aftermath of Kayla losing Dev, and obviously there's the funeral hell for Dev at the Camellia. But Kayla isn't as receptive to Mel and Maggie's attempt to reach out, because they were waiting for Josefina, because she was the one that helped them through losing Macy, and they were hoping that maybe what she did for them that she could do for Kayla. But their attempts to reach out to Kayla, she just pushed other people away. It's just, that's the sad thing of, like, when you're going through something like that, doing a loss of something of that nature, all you want to do is scatter and push people away. I mean, we saw, even though we went 6 months into it, we saw that at the beginning of the season, how Mel and Maggie weren't connecting. They ostracized themselves from each other. They separated each other and were kind of going through it by themselves. And Kayla feels like it even more so, because she's like, right, I made a mistake of getting close to someone. I brought him into the fold. I opened myself up, and I should have known you won't get hurt as long as you don't open up your heart to someone. I think it kind of goes in contrast of who she is, because of her being like, yeah, live life, to the fullest, because of, her leukemia. So, but I guess now it's a situation of, like, right, just because I shouldn't have been so willing to just open up my heart, because not only did I get hurt in the process, because Dev wanted to help me, he died in the process. So she's off on her own. In fact, the Charm ones kind of split up this episode even more so, not just because, we're working on different stuff. Mel is spending time with Roxy because Roxy's dealing with something, but it turns out Roxy hasn't told Mel about her circumstances, that she has to enter a sleep for every 7 years. For 7 years, rather. I was trying to remember who she said that to. I guess she must have explained it to Harry, and Harry never got... Maybe he just assumed that Roxy had told Mel. But I'm trying to remember. I want to say it was somebody that... Because that's how we as the audience found out about it, because Roxy was talking to somebody. But I want to say it might have been Harry, but maybe I'm misremembering. But, Mel is completely unaware, so... For her, this whole being a charm one thing, she already made a mistake of letting it get in the way of her relationships. It's gotten in the way of, like, 3 relationships. There's the whole Jada thing, there was the Nico thing, and then there was the Ruby situation. I don't think she dated anyone in between that. Because she met Ruby in season 2. Was that season 3 she met Ruby? I don't remember. But yeah, it's like, yeah, she's only been in like 3 relationships over the course of the series. And yeah, magic has gotten away now. Which, to be fair, whether it's this Charmed ones or the OG Charmed show, that's been a prevalent thing of, like, kind of hard to have a normal relationship without it having its complications, especially being the Charmed ones. So she didn't want to sacrifice that again, even though it's like, yeah, we are kind of dealing with the end of the world type of situation, but it's like, right, but Mel was trying to find a more perfect balance of, like, right, I don't need to jump on everything. You look into it and find out whether there's validity to it or not. It's like, considering everything that's going down, Mel should have, like, jumped at the opportunity. But I also get where she's coming from too, because she was hoping Maggie could understand that I'm not trying to make her, like, I shouldn't have to choose between that she shouldn't feel like I'm abandoning her just because I'm choosing to be with you right now. I mean, it's kind of in an end of the world type of situation. You are the ones that kind of have to save the day, but it's even more important in times like that you are there with the people you care about. But she kind of threw it in Maggie's face about, right, you just want an excuse because you and Jordan, because you guys have slept together like 4 times, even if you're supposed to be broken up, but you just still haven't figured that out, and you're kind of avoid figuring that out, which was kind of true. But let's focus on Mel's situation first. Her spending time with Roxy, because Roxy's looking for the band, the small people who play in that band, and I'm assuming she was trying to make sure everything was above board before she went to sleep. That's like last minute things of making sure everything's going to be running smoothly while she's gone. Because I think it's just like, right, because so much can change in 7 years. I mean, when you went to sleep and woke up, it's like 7 years passed and your wife had left you. You thought she died, and now you recently found out, was it last episode, found out, oh no, she didn't, either last episode or episode before last, like, oh no, she didn't die, she just left me. So that's kind of, that's quite the sting. So I think she just wanted to make sure everything was kind of right in order, and she was probably reluctant to tell Mel the truth. So they end up using that potion to shrink themselves, which I was like, oh, how very Alice in Wonderland-esque. And I love that Roxy was kind of like super against it. She was just kind of like, ah. It's like, oh, no, like you had a very cockamamie plan with the whole 1920 things. It's like, you know, I promise this isn't going to be that type of cockamamie plan. And Roxy's like, no, it's going to end up being another one of your cockamamie plans. I love that. But sadly, one of the people in the bands killed his other bandmate, which is like, oh, because she was going to warn Roxy and Mel about everything, because she was still on the Charm One's side. He's not. He's one of the people that was sucked in by the Unseen, which is like, man, they're getting everybody. So that kind of sucks, because he says that Sonny ended up showing him the way, and now it's like, right, the day of the fall was going to happen, which Harry met up with Diana again, and which let's quickly talk about that, which was an interesting thing. Like, they just subtly introduced potentially a multiverse, which I was almost about to say, like, I don't think it's going to be that, but like, do you think that's going to try and imply that trying to say that Charmed, the original series, is still in continuity in this series because it's just on a different Earth? Not saying that this other world that Diana's from is that. I mean, maybe it's not, because she said like her world has a Charm One too with powerful premonitions. It's like, well, we know Phoebe was the premonition person, so I don't know if that's supposed to be like some subtle connection of being like, oh yeah, that charmed universe, it coexists in this charmed universe, it's just they're different universes. So I'm like, that'd be interesting if that's where they're going around. And even if they don't do that, they could just be like, oh, it's kind of like a what if situation of like, there are multiple, the OG Charmed One and this one are just two of multiple possibilities. So that's interesting. That's what I immediately took that as. But it turns out somehow that person, Charmed One from the other world, ended up having premonitions about this world, and that's what all those VHSs are about. Which even Diana's like, I don't completely understand it. Maybe like magic can only be held on the VHSs because it's so powerful. It's such powerful magic. So that's one thing. Then there's the Jordan who ran into Chloe thing, and Chloe needs help because her other sister disappeared, and she's trying to bring her, because she's trying to figure out what happened to her sister Daphne. So they go to Maggie for help, and Maggie's going to try and use a spell to go into Daphne's memory to see what happened to her last. Which obviously there's the whole like her and Jordan figuring things out for themselves. I love, what was it that Chloe said? She's like, oh, it's like a Law and Order show. And she was like, what was it? No, CSI Magical Victims Unit or something like that. I think it's what she said. I was like, I actually kind of like that. I was about to, for a second, I was like, I'm surprised there hasn't been like a, I guess the closest thing would probably be Grimm, like a magical, I mean, I guess certain elements about Once Upon a Time, but it wasn't like, I guess Grimm would be the closest because it had procedural crime drama elements to it. So that was probably the closest you get to like a magical cop, I guess. Because we got our science fictional cop. One example of that would be like official cops. Because I'm about to say, like, you could make the argument with the Winchesters, but they were never like official cops hunting monsters and stuff. So, but I'd say Grimm's probably the closest thing. On the science fictional front, you have Jack from Eureka. Him and Joe. God, I was blanking on Joe's name for a second there. It is Joe, right? God, it's been so long. Erica Sarah's character. Yeah, it was Joe. God, I can't believe I was slipping on that for a second. But regardless. And speaking of Alice in Wonderland, because I made that reference earlier when they were shrinking, it's like, oh, you have... God, Maggie. Once again, I hate when I do that because I had to pause for a second because I was like, Sarah. I was like, no, I'm calling the actress who plays Maggie by her real name of Sarah. I was in my head, all I could see was like Sarah Jeffrey as I was saying that, but I was like, no, that's her real name. Maggie went down the literal rabbit hole and came out wearing a dress. I guess it's to fit the theme of the memory she was in, which just, once again just gave me even more Alice in Wonderland vibes. But it turns out that the lost one was pretending to be her sister Annie, like, oh, you can bring me back to life, which obviously, when it comes to dealing with death, it's kind of been a major theme in this season. Everyone's kind of handled it in their own ways, trying to get some form of closure, trying to bring someone back that they care about. And so it was interesting when she reacted to Maggie. I was like, ooh, that's freaky. And it's like, yeah, the memory also responded too, because Daphne's like, who are you talking to? So it's kind of weird that the memory can like break like that. But I was like, at first I was like, whoa, like, how did that happen? But it was like, right, the lost one realized what she was doing. And in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense how the lost one knew, but we'll get to that when we get to Kayla's side of things. So Maggie was kind of stuck down there. And obviously it kind of led to a whole thing of like, Jordan's like, no, let me save you. But she's like, no, we can't have this codependent relationship that we have where anytime like something bad goes on, I rush to you to be the shoulder to cry on. And then you always have to be the one to kind of risk everything to save me. We constantly find ourselves in this cycle, and it's not a good, healthy foundation for a relationship. So ultimately, Maggie was able to use Daphne's powers as a pixie to grow wings. It's like, oh, you just have to think happy thoughts, which is like, oh, how very Neverland-esque in the regards of like, well, in the Neverland case with Peter Pan, it's like, oh, you just have to, little pixie dust, and all you have to do is believe. Believe more so than happy thoughts, but still. And Maggie was able to fly up, so. And at the same time, Kayla was on her trip back. She was going to meet up with Brent. I thought it was kind of a little sad that she was like, right, I want to be around you and mom and my mom. And I need to be around people who understand me. Because these are people, like, because she's still in her head of like, you guys might be my sisters. We're not sisters by blood. We're kind of like sisters that were put together just by destiny and fate, so we're not real sisters, so you guys don't really know me. She just, once again, just pushing them away because she's like, right, you guys aren't really, she appreciates their attempts, but it's like, right, it's just because we're brought together, we don't really know each other that well, even though they have been building a nice rapport with each other. But then all of a sudden she gets stopped, and that lady that being, I was like, oh, that's weird. Then later on she shows up with the totem. I was like, what's going on here? Turns out she's one of the OG charmed ones. I'm like, yo! And so I love that she's like, oh no, come on, Kayla, let me talk to you for a second. And basically, I laced one of those banana critters because I figured it'd be too long for me to explain, so it's better to show you. And which Kayla's like, all right, okay, we'll talk this out next time about the conversation about consent, because it's like, right, you're going to go on quite the road trip, just without the road. So that was interesting. And when she snapped out of it, like Kayla was in a trance where she painted the story, where we get the full story of the charmed ones, which is interesting, really, really interesting to find out, right, they took down the Conqueror, they took his power and put it in one place that ended up being the source, but one of the, was it Anara? Was it Ishani? Because Kayla was kind of reluctant about the whole charm one thing, but it turns out that the one that she was talking to was Inshani, who's been wandering the earth. She's kind of been cursed to wander this world alone, because the original Sisterhood broke up, which I'll get into in a second. What is interesting, though, that she said that none of them were related. So it's not like, at least Mel and Maggie are siblings. I mean, also, like, they don't really get into it, but let's not forget, they're only half siblings. Granted, they grew up full siblings, so it didn't really matter. So, but Kayla feels like, oh, we're not siblings, so you guys are actually sisters, and I'm only related to you guys because I got your other sisters, like, stem cells and stuff like that. But the OG Charmans, is interesting to know that they weren't related. They kind of chose this, well, they were joined together by a sister. They kind of chose to be sisters when they were given the power, because when the Conqueror was defeated, it was basically that the all 9 a species of magical creature, like the species of the magical world ended up sealing away the Conqueror's power and with the remaining of their power, and so it needed to kind of go somewhere else in the process, and they ended up creating the Charmed Ones. That power divided amongst three, and they were able to defeat the Conqueror, put all that power in the what would eventually become the Source. But one of the sisters, who we later on find out is the freaking the Lost One. I was like, and now that name makes, once again, they just think like, there's so many layers to it. For one, to know that the big bad this entire time was a Charmed One was so fascinating. It also flows into the whole thing of like, you're the Lost One. It's like, right. It's almost, you were a lost Charmed One. Because the other two turned against her because she wanted to basically release the magic out there into the world, kind of giving it access to everyone. So kind of almost like so everyone could be powerful. Because once everyone has access to it, no one would kind of fight over it anymore. Well, more so she was going to try and become a benign conqueror. She was going to become like a good god, essentially. But they knew like that type of power could corrupt anyone, so they sealed her away all this time. Is like, wow, betrayed by your own sisters, and the magic kind of like punished them. The one became the guardian of the tree, and the other one, I guess that's also why she still had unfinished business, because she didn't get a chance to go into it. But now we know why Harry found her, because she was dealing with the aftermath of all of this. Like, she knew that her other sister was involved in all of this, but that kind of created a curse. Like, that broken sisterhood is what sprinkled down and made it so that every other sisterhood would always fall to some extent. So it's like, right, so that's where this all started. Is kind of fascinating, and Scott, we're kind of all coming full circle in this regard. But the other element I thought was kind of interesting, and they kind of lean into the irony of it too, is that all these creatures are manipulated into hating the Charmed Ones, not realizing they're resurrecting a Charmed One. Because if they knew that they were helping a Charmed One, they were like, wait, we're doing what? And they wouldn't have been too keen about it. So luckily, when it was all said and done, the Charmed Ones are reunited at the end. They come together in the end because, well, once again, the one that was with Kayla, I keep blanking on her name. I want to say it was like I said, Ishani. She tells Kayla, because Kayla's like, right, it's just, I just got Macy's stem cells, so it's not really like a real sisterhood. But she's like, no, you weren't the only one. 5 other people got Macy's stem cells. None of them showed potential like you did. You were the only one who became a Charmed One because you were chosen because of who you are deep down inside. Your character is what made you chosen. So it's not like you were just the only one. No, there were others, and you were chosen because of who you really are on the inside. So what are you going to... So kind of showing that it isn't... There are greater forces, she says, like even older than me, older than all of this, fate and destiny that brought you together. So are you going to turn against that? You know, are you just going to be like, oh, it's just luck? It's like, no, a lot was put together to make this happen. So... And in the end, Kayla decides to come back. It's like, I'll be there to help my sisters, you know? And because Mel and Maggie had made up too, because Maggie realized, you know, she was like, right, I was kind of taking all my frustrations out on Mel because the end of the world, everything between her and Jordan, the whole 2 dads situation, like, it's just a lot. And even Mel realizes that because she was talking to Roxy about, right, Maggie's had a lot to deal with in this past year, so understandable. But ultimately, they try to stop... Well, Chloe tries to stop Daphne, but Daphne didn't want to do it, you know, and Maggie tried to explain to her, like, I get it. She's like, I became a person I wasn't proud of after I lost my sister, but saying that there is no easy way. If someone's saying that there's an easy fix to all that pain, they're lying to you. But in the end, Daphne felt like there was no going back. So everyone sacrificed themselves. And the sad thing is, they're not all going to be here, Sunny included, because you almost want them all to be there to realize, like, that's all the sad thing of it. They're not going to be around to realize the mistake that they made. Like, Sunny's not going to be like, wait, everything I've done, all the terrible stuff I've done, I thought for the greater good. It was a good, oh, we got to stop the Charmed Ones. In fact, I actually helped an OG Charmed One. So I wish they could have all been alive to recognize, because I wanted to be one of those things where it's like, oh, you helped me, because I figured it was going to blow up in their faces. I knew it was. We all knew it would, but I wasn't expecting the Charmed One angle. That adds the irony, an extra layer of irony, because I figured once the Lost One was resurrected, they'd kill any loyal subjects, because it's like, right, I no longer need you. And so that's why she hid who she really was, why she presented herself as like, oh, the smoke monster. That also ties back into what I was saying about how the fact is she knew exactly what spell Maggie was using, because she's a witch herself. So she knew exactly what spell Maggie was using to try and look through Daphne's memories. So, and she says that she's not here to fight the Charmed Ones. In fact, that she wasn't trying to fight them, that she was actually going to bring all the wars to an end. Believing herself, once kind of being a chosen one. I mean, it kind of makes sense also being a charmed one, but an extra layer of being the chosen one of like, I'm going to take all this power and I'm going to make everything right. But once again, absolute power corrupts absolutely. We know where one of her siblings was in the veil, kind of like that limbo world that Harry could visit, but we also know where the other one is. Just, her punishment is to walk this world alone. So I'm sure those two are going to meet each other, and she's probably going to finally kill her or something like that. But she ended up taking the power of 3 back, and now it's all in one person, herself now. So it seems like they have their individual powers as witches, but not the power of 3. They're probably going to have to like somehow find a way to snatch that back. Because at the same time this is all happening, Harry finally went back to the video store. He's talking to Diana. Before he's even going to help her, he needs to find out about the day of the fall, which was on the tape, but I guess she doesn't remember where the tape was, because she's watched multiple tapes. She's watched all those tapes multiple times, so it's like, right, it's somewhere in this section, so I have no idea where the video is specifically, so I'm going to have to watch all of that, so finding out more on that front. But the apocalypse, the end is nigh, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There's only, I believe, 2 episodes left of the season, but more so the series. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't know if this season was originally written or done in a way where it's like, oh, everything is going to be open, and where it's like, it's going to have a conclusive enough ending. Like, season 1 had a conclusive enough ending that if you wanted to end things there, you could have. Because season 2, obviously season 2 was cut short because of the pandemic, but season 3 had the cliffhanger, so I don't know if season 4 ends like season 1. I could definitely see it ending in a way where it's like, okay, like some threads are still open, but you could still build more story from there and be more satisfied with the ending we're getting, or who knows how open-ended the end is going to be. It's just going to be depending on, because I don't think they've had time to subsequently, since the announcement of the cancellation, I mean, you never know. I doubt they've had time to go in, film more. Because I think Legacies, if I'm not mistaken, is in the process of like changing its ending. I think I could be mistaken, because it's still like, because I think this season had like 3 more episodes, because like 18, 19, and 20. So I think they might be like redoing or reshaping those last 3 episodes. Hence why they stopped airing Legacies for a little. I don't know. So I don't think Charms had that opportunity. I don't know whether other stuff like Roswell or In the Dark are going to have that opportunity too. Like whatever endings were set for season 4, that might be all we get. Not unless they add on some extra stuff at the tail end, film some extra stuff just to make it a little cleaner of an end. I don't know. Well, but I'm still interested to see where things kind of go. Like I said, see whether or not there is a conclusive enough ending to kind of at least be somewhat satisfied. Obviously, it still sucks that we're not getting more, but well, I'm still excited to see how everything plays out going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.